stand for the invocation and the pledge. Lord, please guide the council here, the commissioners, in making wise decisions for the city of Canby and the participants at this meeting. Everybody gets home safely and enjoy a nice summer evening. Your name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. I know it's the end of summer and it's looking beautiful out there, but you're all here. So first up is, is there anybody that would like to speak on items that are not on the agenda? Okay. If we can get approval of our minutes from the last meeting.
I recommend approval of the minutes from July 23rd, 2018 Planning Commission meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Brian, is there any new business?
There is not.
Okay. We were just jumping right into it. Okay, next up is, this is a public hearing. And to testify, please, if you want to testify, please fill out one of these white or blue sheets, slips back there. Give them to Lainey at the counter here. We will consider a request for approval of a 90-lot subdivision located in the southwest Canby Development Concept Plan approved annexation area. Riverside Park Subdivision, SUB 18-04. The matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please fill out the public testimony card and give to the recording secretary. At the appropriate time, when your name is called, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and we got that under control. Right? Okay. And interest in the matter. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. You may be limited by time for your presentation. Generally, the applicant will have a total of 15 minutes to speak. The proponents will be given 5 minutes each, the opponents will be given 5 minutes each, and those thought to be neutral on the matter will be given 5 minutes each. The applicant will then have 10 minutes for rebuttal. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access and to become a part of the record. All written testimony received both for and against prior to the hearing shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable review criteria contained as indicated in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the applicable land use regulations which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if it is only to concur with previous testimony. At this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest to please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from hearing the present matter.
None.
None.
Okay. Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and extent of such contact at this time. None. Okay. Does any member of the audience have any questions for any commissioner regarding conflict of interest or ex parte contact? Okay. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. First, Brian will give the staff report. Then we will ask some questions, if any. We will then open the hearing for public testimony. The applicant will have not more than 15 minutes. Proponents, not more than 5 minutes. Opponents, not more than 5 minutes. And those that are neutral on the matter, not more than 5 minutes each. And then a rebuttal, if necessary, by the applicant, not more than 10 minutes. That time, I'll close the public testimony. There will be questions from us, and then we will discuss and deliberate. No additional testimony unless specifically allowed by the chair. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Any questions? Okay, let's move forward. Brian?
Thank you, Chair Savory. Good evening, Commissioners. We'll get right into the proposed Riverside Park subdivision. Indicated on the agenda, it's a 90-lot subdivision. It's proposed currently in potentially 4 different phases, which is not unusual for them to be divided into individual phases to respond to changes in the economy or various other reasons and such. So they do have those phases outlined if you look at it, preliminary plat closely. This map's showing you the location in the hatched area. And as you'll recall, this area is shown on the adopted Southwest Canby Development Concept Plan that was adopted by the City Council when this property here that's subdivisions proposed in was annexed. It was required during the subdivision development process to follow the approved concept plan. And we think it's done that very well in matching what the discussions and the agreement were at the time that this particular concept plan was developed. From looking at the concept plan, you can see that along the Malala River, there was a buffer planned that would be in effect a park, and the intent of that particular buffer was to handle a future trail that could be constructed. And if you recall, because you were all here, as you'd come off of Ivy Street, you could connect to this trail, go along the Malala River. You could stop off at Wayside Park. You could even go across the street into the other park that's indicated to be part of this subdivision, or keep going. And right now it's to dead end. But at the very end here, there is a pedestrian easement indicated in the plat that goes up to the street where you can take a sidewalk along the streets and connect back to the trail again to pick up at this park and continue on over to Elm Street, which is the pathway down to the Village of the Locks. And so that basically shows you that there are 3 kind of parks basically proposed in this particular subdivision. And then looking at this overall concept plan, you see the South Ivy Street right-of-way. You see this bulge here. This is that future roundabout that was discussed during the annexation. This will undoubtedly become a future capital improvement item for the city's transportation plan. The next time it's updated, this project will be added to that so that future SDC monies that are collected with new developments can go towards the funding of that future capital improvement project. It's not part of the TSP right now, but that's how we would eventually probably end up funding that. Down at the end of South Ivy towards the bridge, the existing right-of-way widens, and all of the right-of-way for this area is next, along with the subdivision. Down here at the near the river at the low point, which is normal for a sewer sanitary lift station, there is a plan for the city to construct with system development charges a sanitary sewer lift station that will serve I think this entire development. I think all 90 lots will be served from that pump station. We're making headway towards planning for that, which is important now because we have a development proposed, and by the time they get all of their approvals in place, their infrastructure constructed, and if we follow the same pattern that the Planning Commission agreed to do for the Timber Park subdivision on Southeast 13th, you indicated that we could issue building permits before the pump station was actually operational if we felt comfortable that by the time a home was built, it would be. Because we didn't really want to cause those people in the moving vans heading towards their new home to find a shock that we wouldn't let them in the homes. So the developer's well aware of that and is going to keep that in mind in his timing of how he moves forward with this development and keeping tabs on the city's progress on that particular thing. This map also shows better where the medium density or the R1.5 zone was on the upper part of the subdivision, and then the lower part is the low density residential. So there are two zoning districts, I believe, involved. This is a copy of the proposed plat here. The dashed line down here by the river is the urban growth boundary. So part of the property actually goes down the slope towards the river, but that isn't being developed in any way. And track C is indicated here as open space, which in effect will be part of the park that will be dedicated to the city. And the little track right here in the corner is where the sanitary sewer pump station will be located, that area. You can see, if you look closely here, the phases. You have to go across this zoning line here, but it looks like phase one is all of this area here. And they've got phase two being right here. And three's down here in this corner. And then phase four is the rest of it. So if it goes in the phases as they're planned, most of the traffic is going to head towards South First Street. And in fact, at this current time, unless there is development to the property to the north, which our understanding is Hope Village is planning to do something with, including this tax lot here and the one to the north here, that's what it's going to take to make a connection to South Ivy Street, because that isn't proposed with this proposed subdivision, because it's on land that they don't control or have control to. See, before I get to this, well, this is related to the overall Southwest Canby Development Concept Plan. There was a traffic study done for the entire area. And as you know, you recently approved a subdivision on the west side of South First Street called the Beck Pond subdivision. And so between that and this one is the majority of the Southwest Canby development concept plan, although there's some lots further to the south that didn't participate in either of these two subdivisions or in annexations at the same time that these two subdivisions did. But the traffic study was over the entire defined development concept area. This has an indication of one of the results of that was that the proposed development within the Southwest Canby would have 68 new trips in the PM peak hour, 90 trips in the PM. And the overall conclusion was that there was not any need for any mitigation at any of the nearby intersections, and that the internal streets would be capable of handling the additional traffic. This trip generation wasn't for just this 90 lot, but complete development of the entire Southwest Canby development concept area. So we did get two public inputs. You've got 2 or 3 in your packet. Had a chance to look at those. There was one from Susan Gallagher, and I believe she was here at one of our meetings, and or someone with them. They talked about property owners on the other side of the river, and explained to us all of that the Molalla River in the adjacent area is in effect a wildlife refuge. And if you've read this, it's just amazing, the variety of wildlife and such. But one of the things they've indicated in their thing that we were going to try to remember, and so you may want to ask the developer about it, is whether along the urban growth boundary, the bank of the bluff, whether they're proposing a fence. They've talked about a 4-foot high chain link fence, I believe, somewhere in the staff report, but it wasn't entirely clear as whether that was planned along the entire bluff area, along the trail. And they're advocating for that very much. I think spoke to us before about how important that would be to keep potential users of that park area even before a trail is built, since it will be a public park, from meandering willy-nilly down the slope into private property and or across on private property. They even talked about that might help discourage people in the backyards. It's very common for them to dump their grass clippings across the fence. Well, in this case, they'd be dumping it on the city's parkland, so I don't think the city would really appreciate that either. But those are some of the issues that she pointed out in the letter. We also had some input from Tom Rushton and from Julie Rushton. You've got those, and we had a letter here from Ed Netter. I read that, but now I've forgotten. Oh, he's concerned about the water well that's on his property that will be very close and nearby to this particular subdivision as it develops. So there's some concern there whether that nearby development in some way could contaminate his water supply. And so he's kind of advocating for the developer to help him do his connection to the water system, maybe earlier than later. We also had a letter here from Diane Fatua, and she is concerned about the construction and particularly stage. That's something that's really hard. Any development anywhere has to have a period of construction. And in this particular case, it's been voiced several times from neighboring property owners, those living in Hope Village, that the impact that that construction is going to have on them, the noise, the traffic, the dump trucks. And unfortunately, there's only one means of access, and that is First Street to 13th. At some point, they will have another means of access over to Elm, and it's possible that they could arrange for that access earlier in the process through gravel road or something, if necessary. But before they start construction, they do go through a pre-construction process, and they develop a traffic management plan during the construction phase so that we all agree on where that construction traffic should be coming in from and directed. So if you have any input on that or concerns about that, you could give some guidance to us if you want for that. Right now, I think everybody's assuming that it's going to be on First Street because it's there, and they'd have to construct the other one all the way through before that would be available. One of the inputs that we got after the packet went out, this one's from Don and Judy Stone at 405 Southwest Pacific Crest Drive. They are members of Hope Village, and their first concern is simply, why would we be approving all of these developments in this particular area of town all at once? And of course, we don't really control that. It's the private market and individual property owners that come forward that want to develop their property, or if you go back, annex their property that portends future development. And so we don't really control the speed and the economy that makes it favorable for these applications to come in front of us. And so I agree that it seems like there's quite a number of them all in this particular area, so it's quite impactful in a change for those that live in this part of town if all of the developments that we have proposed right now come to fruition in a reasonable time frame. I might indicate again, though, that we don't know for sure how many of these 90 lots will be developed within the next 2 years versus 4 or 5 years, because it could very well stretch out much longer. That's one reason they've done the phasing, to be able to address the need to meet the market demand, which can easily change very quickly. Trying to think, there was one other thing they mentioned in here. Oh, they brought up the issue of a need for a stop sign on 13th Avenue at First Street. And that was a big topic, and that topic's been thoroughly addressed through the Traffic Safety Commission, and they've sent a formal recommendation indicating that they think the real solution is the eventual connection to Elm Street that's going to provide enough of another means of access out to 13th that will divide the traffic enough to avoid the adverse impacts of another stop sign on a major arterial street so close to the existing signal light that's at Ivy and 13th. That we need to be in a real dire strait before we start putting additional stop signs on an arterial roadway. We talked about all the different problems that would entail with trucks trying to get through that area, and having to stop and start, and the additional noise and trouble with that. So, but people are legitimately concerned about the greater difficulty that they're going to have getting out onto Southeast 13th from First Street. And there's no doubt there'll be more periods during the day when it's going to be longer time periods before they can successfully make those left turns out of that place. One other input that we got came late on Friday, and I was actually out of the office on Friday, but we had sent notice to Clackamas County and shared with them the original traffic study that was done in the entire Southwest Canby Development Concept Plan area. Their traffic engineer reviewed that, came back with on late Friday and shared with us that they accepted that traffic study and its results because originally they had asked us to delay the approval of this for another traffic study for this subdivision. So we shared that with them, and they agreed that it was adequate and the findings that were suitable to meet this subdivision's needs as well. The traffic study was originally proposed and such when the Beck Pond area west of Fur was annexed and brought forward at that time. They did, however, recommend a safety improvement that they thought could potentially be partly, if not totally, paid for by this particular subdivision because of its size and the amount of additional traffic that would be contributed to the 13th and South Ivy intersection. They said that changing the signal heads that are at that intersection right now from what they call a traditional five-section signal to a flashing yellow arrows head has been proven with research to reduce turning accidents by 25%. And I haven't had time to research that. I'm not really the appropriate person to do that. It sounds like with the county traffic engineer fully supporting their recommendation that we require the developer to help address that issue, that it makes some logical sense. And so the staff feels comfortable in a proposed new condition tonight. The developer just found out about it tonight, because of the timing. And I was going to read that here just for your consideration tonight. If the city's consulting traffic engineering firm concurs with the county recommendation, this development shall be responsible for contributing a proportional share of the cost for the conversion of the existing signal light head at 13th Avenue and South Ivy Street to a 4-section flashing yellow arrowhead. The proportional amount shall be determined from an estimate for the conversion cost and the percent of additional peak hour traffic added by this development to that intersection. So there's some work that would have to be done if this was made a condition of approval, but I think it's entirely fair if we make it a proportional, understanding that there's lots of traffic at that intersection today, and so if we need a safety improvement, then it should be the entire community that's contributing towards that safety and only the proportional aspect of the additional traffic that the developer should do. This is a picture for those at home that shows those two different signals. But I can't really explain it to you since I'm not familiar with the differences in the signals, so I'm not going to try. So the staff has recommended through the findings that in the staff report that we approve this subdivision subject to the conditions, and that you consider the proposed new condition that we've indicated on the slide tonight. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Ron, you had mentioned that the main access to the site during construction is going to be First Street. Typically, projects are required to have a secondary emergency access to the site. How is that being provided with this project?
Well, as I said, we don't get into the construction traffic plan at this stage, and so it hasn't been discussed. It's something that the public works folks and the street people work on at that stage. And so if you think it's important to have more than one means of access.
Well, I guess aside from construction, but after
You mean after
Yeah.
development? At that point, there will be two means, Elm Street and First Street. Both are a way of in and out of the Beck Pond subdivision, and until there's a connection to Ivy Street, all of this development also will be using Elm Street and First Street.
Okay, so it's under the assumption that that other subdivision that's connecting to Elm Street will be constructed prior to this subdivision?
Yes,
Okay.
and it's under construction now, I believe.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Just for clarification for the people that were concerned about noise and traffic, there are hours where the construction is allowed to go on, correct?
That's right.
Can you just?
I believe
state
it starts at 7 in the morning. I always forget. We get questions about that all the time. I look it up and then I quickly forget. But I think it's 7 a.m.
It is.
to
7 to 10.
and
10
ends
p.m.
to 10, 7 to 10? Okay.
So it's really the early morning times is when, they might want to get started early or something, but they would have to go through our noise ordinance and get an exception to do that.
Alrighty, proponents. You could step up, state your name and address, please.
My name is Tucker Mayberry.
You gotta turn the green light on. There you go.
It was already on. My name is Tucker Mayberry. I'm the project developer for this particular project. Address is 10801 Southwest Riverside Drive, Portland, Oregon 97219.
Matt Newman, NW Engineers. We're in Hillsborough, and we're representing Tucker.
Appreciate you seeing us tonight. I can probably shed a little bit of information about other accesses to the project. If you see where 17th Avenue stubs to the east, that property to the east is owned by Hope Village, and we have an agreement with Hope Village, who at some point will probably be coming before you guys too for a plan to expand their facilities. But we have a cost-sharing agreement to continue 17th Avenue out to Ivy. So we expect that would be constructed sooner than later, perhaps. But we agree with you. We think it'd be nice to have some more connection there. Other than that, what I want to say is this: we agree with staff. This project is on purpose is almost exactly what you guys looked at before when you approved the concept plan for this area. We made some little tweaks to make it fit a little better and get some better access to Ed Nutter's property next door. We did some of those things, but other than that, it's pretty much what you saw before.
I'd like to speak a minute about the phasing. So where it says phase one, the reason we chose to phase it that way is so there'd be a mix. This is roughly quarters of the lots, but we wanted to obviously access First Street with the first phase, but also the sanitary sewer. So we had to take the phase one all the way down to the park, and then extend where we can connect to sewer and the utilities down there. But at the same time, we were talking about a phase two, if needed for an emergency access, that could be at least rocked or in some manner. So there would be an extension of 19th even before Phase 2 is built. So, or excuse me, 18th, before Phase 2 is built. But we wanted to have an equal number, approximately equal number of the 5,000-foot lots up on the north that are 1.5, and then the 7,000-foot lots down below. And we wanted to have the park in the first phase, or at least adjacent to the park. As far as utilities go, we know we're going to have to loop the water down 18th as well. So that's why Phase 2 is really pretty much across the top. And then what we're calling Loop Street, it stubs to the north there, and so we understand that we'll need to have some kind of a temporary hammerhead for turnaround in the area of where we're showing lot 90. Somewhere in that area, we'll have to have a hammerhead until that Hope Village property develops. Tucker, you want to speak to the fence question?
Yeah, previously when the fence idea came up, we were certainly open to building a 4-foot fence along there. I think the question is really timing and making sure the city really wants a fence there. But that top of bank is, boy, that urban growth boundary dotted line is very close to the top of bank. It drops off very quickly, and that's at the 18% grade line. So you could go along there and put that fence. I don't know when that park's going to be able to be used, and that's a question really for the city. If there's no trail built immediately, it'll look just like the forest, because that's kind of the edge of the field is right where the edge of those lots will be. It won't be evident that that's public park until we make it a park. And so I don't know that we'll get a lot of trespassing back there to the beginning. But we're not opposed to putting some kind of a chain link fence along there to keep people from wandering. Although they're not going to wander too easily. It's really steep. It just drops right off.
So would the chain link fence separate the park from the property owners to the north, and also separate?
It really would not.
It would not.
No, what it would separate is the park from the land outside the urban growth boundary that goes over the hill.
So people could theoretically just wander onto people's property, as Brian would say, willy-nilly.
Yeah,
I like
willy-nilly.
that phrase, willy-nilly. So they can just wander up there. My concern is that we are already experiencing, and can be apparently, some growth in our homeless population. And with homeless population comes, a fairly high degree of crime and refuse, needles, all of that sort of stuff. And so my concern is for the neighbors, for the people you're selling these houses to, are not going to be, they're going to be left, even though a 4-foot fence probably wouldn't stop these folks, but at least it would give some sort of deterrence.
It gives you an idea where the demarcation line is,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the fact that we're doing that tract, it's tract, I think it's B or D, I can't see very well. But that's the first park that would, parkland, and that's adjacent to that. So, maybe the timing on that fence is sooner than later. Because people could come in then and they could disperse behind most of those homes will probably have their own backyard fence. But there'll be that 35-foot wide strip of city property at the top of the bank.
Okay. I have no more questions. Any more questions?
I do. There was mention in one of the requests too, as far as connecting Mr. Netter's water. Is that something that is on the table at all?
We hadn't talked to Mr. Nutter about that, but
Okay. And is this, I mean, obviously you've done the engineering to it. Is it that close? I think we have rules around how close you can build to the wells.
yes, what I think, and Matt, you might know better than I am, but I think the biggest concern is where you put a dry well in relation to a water well.
100 feet, yeah.
It might be farther than
Yeah,
that.
we have 267-foot separation by our master stormwater plan that DEQ approved here in Canby for a dry well installation, to be that far from.
As far as providing the water, it could go, you'll see we have these flag lot easements there between 12 and 13, or
There's a,
they're pointing to there.
Here,
Right. So, water would be going down that street in Phase 1, so it certainly could be provided. I assume you could put a meter right there. I don't think it'd have to be public stub, but this is something we'll have to talk about.
yeah, it could be done certainly during our engineering period, and we've been working with Mr. Nutter on a bunch of other issues, so we're very comfortable with doing that.
Put it on your list.
The other item that you might want to consider is the proximity of the wastewater sanitary sewer mains and laterals in proximity to the well. There's also DEQ standards for that, which I'm sure you've covered, but
And I don't know what those setbacks are, but that's a good point.
Anything else?
I don't think so, but any other questions, we're happy to answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any, let's see, we'll move into other testimony. So I have a Greg Gingrich. Okay, you could step forward, state your name and address, please.
Craig Ginrich, and I'm the Executive Director of Hope Village, address 1535 South Ivy. And I'm here in support of the project, but I am here, I just want to clarify, to represent the board or the owner. I wouldn't necessarily be representing the residents. So I would be available to answer any questions
Okay,
you might have.
but you're in support of it, that,
Yes.
okay. Anything else that you would like to, okay. Any questions?
Yeah, as far as the access through 17th, that's through property you are planning on developing in
That's
the
correct.
future? And you wouldn't have any problems with them giving some kind of temporary access to Ivy Street through
No,
that?
that's something we've been discussing all along. I think the major concern there is the timing of the roundabout, or whether there's going to be some other type of access, but beyond that, we're going to work with the development.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
you know, I might address that question because staff's assumption right now is that until a capital project is actually added to the transportation plan, any connection to South Ivy will be a standard to the existing street that's there. And it will be later when the city funds this improvement project and comes back in and builds the roundabout, because it's not going to happen until we have property on the other side of the street as well.
Any questions? Okay, we have Matt Newman? That was you, okay. You're taken care of. Any other people that are proponents of this project? Okay. Now we can go to Mr. Bob Cambus. Did I pronounce that correctly? You could state your name and address, please.
Yeah, my name is Bob Cambrick. I live at 1338 North Maple here in Canby. Unfortunately, sure by luck, This new development will bring 90 new houses, and will have a significant impact on roadway and traffic in the area. The plan discusses two access to this future community, one utilizing fir and an access eventually to ivy. I'm asking the Planning Commission to set the creation of ivy access as a stated priority, and it be designated and finished before any actual house is built. Presently, the plan states the second access will be eventually onto South Ivy as development occurs. My request would require the developer to redesign their plans to first show this connection on their plans as a part of their pre-construction meeting with the Planning Department and Public Works. It would create a requirement identifying criteria for this access to be built within a specific timeline early in the development prior to the constructions of homes, not eventually. Why is this so important? This large development will funnel traffic, especially construction traffic, toward two very busy streets, First and Ivy. And now I've just learned that Ivy is not an option. With only Fir presently in place. Fir is linked to South 13th, which is a very busy, especially every morning and every evening. There needs to be another additional relief outlet, which should be Ivy. I'm asking you not to accept assurances by the developer, but have an actual written, clear requirement that the developer will be held accountable for. Since I have a few extra moments, let me add something that isn't scripted here. I think, I'd like to just note the huge negative effect that 90 homes, despite what a traffic study says, 90 homes will have on the existing homes that live on South Fir below, that connect from this part to 13th Street. And I also think there will be a possible negative effect on those residents that are living in Hope Village. Now, I know the gentleman who just spoke is in favor of Hope Village, but I also know people that have come to the Traffic Safety Commission indicating their very serious concerns about people illegally, because Hope Village is a private property. They're going to use that access through Hope Village because 13th is going to be so crowded. I don't think just having one access at this point in time is fair to any of those people and to the people who are going to be buying this development. Secondly, your traffic study, as you might well imagine, I'm concerned about it. Any of you who live in a subdivision of 90 homes are thinking that only 90 trips are going to occur in the afternoon from these homes, this amount of homes? I don't think so. All I'm asking is for you to seriously consider at this point in time a better plan for this impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Thank you. Any other people that would wish to speak against the project? Are there any people that are neutral on the issue but wish to speak? Would you like to take an opportunity for some rebuttal? Going once, going twice.
Just real quick, as far as the traffic numbers, we rely on the professional traffic engineers, and we're required to provide those studies. We did that, and we have to rely on what they tell us at this point. If they tell us something else, we are absolutely willing to do whatever we need to do to keep safety and all those kind of things happening. That's, but I'm not qualified to decide what that is. That's what the traffic engineers are paid to do. And then on the other subject, just on the fence along the top of the bank, if we build that now, we will have a double fence there, just so everybody's aware of that. There'll be fences the backyards of the house, and then there'll be another fence 35 feet or so back at the top of the bank. So just make sure that's when you'd like that done, I guess is the real question. If we want to do it before there's a trail there, when it's kind of wild area, or should that wait until there's actually a trail?
Any questions?
Yeah, I actually have one for him. How do you feel about Bob's comments on here about getting the connection to Ivy done before mass bulk of the construction is
I think
going?
what will probably happen in reality is that will happen either with a permanent improvement, depending on Hope Village's plans, or it'll be a gravel construction entrance, and that would probably happen in phase 2. And that's because, we've 30 homes in phase 1, or 25, I forgot the number. Phase 2, we're going to have another bunch, and that's probably the really appropriate time to put that second connection in.
Any more questions? Thank you very much. Okay. Last chance for public testimony. Close the public testimony. So, any questions you guys into your head right now?
Yeah, I have a question. It's to Brian about this roundabout, because it looks like that's going to be a problem, because we have to have purchased property on the east side of Ivy Street. That's south of Dinsmore Estates.
The implementation of the roundabout, though, is not critical to the subdivisions going in. It's a very desirable feature to have at the urban-rural interfaces, as the county calls it, as you're coming into town, to help us calm traffic and to help manage the volume of traffic that will eventually be there with full development. But it's going to be an expensive project that we can't require just these developers to do, and because they're unable to do that project until we have land, that doesn't stop a connection to Ivy from happening.
That was my
It
question.
will just be a normal street connection, and we'll come up and tear that out when we do the roundabout sometime in the future, however long that might be, before that project is able to be funded through system development charges that we collect over time.
Thank you.
Depends on the priority of that project and all the other projects. The TSP has 20 years worth of projects, and in 20 years you're supposed to collect enough funds to actually do them all if things work. That's what the TSP's capital financing plan is meant to do, is that if you collect, if you have development and you collect the funds that's outlined in your SDC methodology, you'll have enough money to implement those projects listed in the plan. And so every year we hack off a couple additional projects, hoping that we'll eventually need a new TSP with new projects listed.
The county will allow us to put an intersection in there.
And we're
off of
in
17.
negotiations right now to sign a document that says the city is going to take over all of South Ivy, all the way down to the pump station. Potentially, when the sidewalk project from 99E down to the Lee Elementary School is implemented and finished, we will then take over the entire street. We're about ready to sign on the dash line. Apparently, there's one condition of approval they're still talking about is our urban growth management with the county says that they will give us the equivalent of a 2-inch asphalt overlay for a portion of the street they want us to take over. And so I think they're still discussing that condition.
It occurs to me that, in 20 years, the population of Canby is about to double from 8, according to the DKS people that were in here earlier, the traffic study people that were here several months ago. And we're supposed to go from around 19,000 to between 36 and 38,000 in less than 20 years. So my concern is, the concern on the traffic is certainly not lost on me, and the roundabout should be a little higher priority, but that's just my opinion. So, any other testimony or questions for Brian?
I've got one last question. Is the city able to actually require a second construction access for this project? I mean, is that...
In this particular one, I would think, I'm thinking of the Beck Pond subdivision.
Seems to be on someone else's property, and it'd be difficult to force someone to do that.
That's why in this particular case, I don't think there is. Theoretically, if the Beck Pond subdivision has its streets installed and completed before this one gets very far, you could go not only to 13th on Fur, but you could go across their subdivision to Elm, and that could be a construction. But other than that, no, we couldn't require something across someone else's property. And that's why they talked about the potential of negotiating with Hope Village to put a temporary construction asset. And that'd be very useful for the phase 2, probably. I don't know how that would turn into a possible public access after construction, though. Because I'd have trouble seeing a public access on a non-paved street.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, so we're in the discussion and deliberation phase. What are your thoughts there, Tyler?
I mean, to me, it meets everything that, they said they were going to do. They've been working with the neighbors best they can. I mean, we can't require them to put in the Ivy Street access, which would be great for everybody involved, but sounds like they're willing to do it at phase 2 as soon as, they can, at least for construction, which will get that off the Collector Street.
I'd echo the same. I mean, the development's a good development. I think I'd rather see good, well thought out developments going part of our current plans that we've adopted. I agree Ivy would be nice, but I think we've already seen both the owner of that property, Hope Village, as well as the development wanting to do something there. So I think that's a good sign as well. And I commend the developer for working with the neighbors.
Thank you. John?
Plan, and I can support it.
Okay. Andre?
I echo the previous comments.
Larry?
Yeah, I support it.
I as well. So I will consider a motion to approve the request for approval of a 90-lot subdivision located in the Southwest Canby Development Concept Plan, approved annexation area, Riverside Park subdivision, SUB 18-04.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve Riverside Park subdivision, SUB 18-04.
And I then raise the question, and you are saying with the attached conditions in the staff report, and are you going to consider the county's recommendation that the one up on the screen here, the proposed new condition, or not? We've worded it in a way that I want to know that our consulting traffic engineer also thinks it's a very important safety improvement that we should consider before. And so I've worded it in such a way that if they don't agree with the county engineer's assessment of the 25% reduction in accidents that we could expect.
Good point. Do you want to amend your...
I hadn't quite finished, but I was going to say with conditions as outlined by staff, including the condition approval tonight with the traffic light as written.
We have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. I will now entertain a motion for a final decision for the Riverside Park subdivision SUB 18-04.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we make a final decision to approve Riverside Park subdivision SUB 18-04 with the conditions mentioned previously by the city planner, in addition to the proposed condition tonight for this traffic light.
Have a second.
Second.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next up is items of interest from the planning staff. Brian?
Well, I mentioned at your last meeting, our fearful meeting for September 10th. We were not able to successfully wrangle all the necessary notices, staff work to get 2 of those 5 that we had scheduled. So I can just see the smiles on your face. There'll only be 3 applications on that agenda rather than 5, and we're all going to be better for that.
Does that affect your trip to Florida?
Brian, I won't be here for that meeting. I'll be in Sisters.
And
I won't be here
Mr.
either.
Sirleaf, what?
Or I will miss the 10th and the 24th of September meetings.
Okay. Any,
I will be here the 10th.
I'll be here the 10th, but I will also be missing the 24th meeting.
So it looks like we still will have a,
we'll have a quorum.
how about the 24th meeting?
I'll be here the
2 of them
24th.
gone.
I'll be here the 24th.
I should be here for both.
As will I, and Sean probably will.
I'll be on the 24th. I'll be here.
Okay. Okay. Any items of interest that we would like to direct to Brian? Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.